brothers, are you feeling lucky? Are you ready to play the game? Who's going to be quickest? Who's going to be luckiest?
This is not a game!
No, it's not a game, sweetheart, and I mean that most sincerely.
Why are you doing this?
Yes, I'd quite like to know that too. You set this up. Why?
Because it's not a game, Kate. This is a scale model of war. Every war ever fought right there in front of you. Because it's always the same. When you fire that first shot, no matter how right you feel, you have no idea who's going to die. You don't know whose children are going to scream and burn. How many hearts will be broken? How many lives shattered? How much blood will spill until everybody does what they were always going to have to do from the very beginning? Sit down and talk! Listen to me, listen. I just want you to think. Do you know what thinking is? It's just a fancy word for changing your mind.
I will not change my mind.
Then you will die stupid. Alternatively, you could step away from that box. You could walk right out of that door and you could stand your revolution down.
No. I'm not stopping this, Doctor. I started it. I will not stop it. You think they'll let me go after what I've done?
You're all the same, you screaming kids. You know that? Look at me. I'm unforgivable. Well, here's the unforeseeable. I forgive you. After all you've done, I forgive you.
Hello and welcome to Who Watches Who, a Doctor Who podcast with me, Matthew, and as always, I am joined by...
Hello, I'm Scott.
Hey, I added a few words on the extra. Normally I just go, and as always, and you go, hello, I'm Scott. And I was like, that doesn't even make sense as to introduce someone, so I'll add on the extra few words, but it kind of throws off the rhythm. I don't like it as much. But... Hello and welcome to part 2 of Peter Capaldi Was a Really Good Doctor, as we're looking at the Zygon Inversion this week. It is also our second week as a video podcast, and hopefully the audio is a little bit better this time because, you know, learning curves and whatnot, so audio should be better than it was last week. Although it was okay last week. Stop complaining, all those lack of complaints we got. Anyway, this week we are covering the Zygon Inversion, and... you know, really this episode's most famous for the war speech, which I'm very much looking forward to getting to. It would have been used as the cold open for this episode because it is so goddamn good. Unlike Scott's internet connection currently, where he's a pixely man.
Is it bad?
It's fine right now, and then
Okay.
it becomes terrible, but nothing I can do about that just yet. Maybe one day we'll fix it and we'll record our video separate as well. But not today. Anyway, this episode first aired on the 7th of November 2015, which at the time of recording was 6 years, 3 months, and 5 days ago. And it was a Saturday, and it doesn't feel like it's closer to being a decade old than it is to being brand new.
Yeah, it feels like it was just 2 years ago this episode came out. Honest to God, it just... time flies when you're not having fun, I guess.
Yeah, true. It's been a terrible time since 2015. But there was some interesting stuff that actually happened on this day for once, which, you know, not a lot of stuff usually happens the same day Doctor Who airs. But Sierra Leone is declared Ebola-free by the World Health Organization after a death toll of about 4,000 people. The World Health Organization, who's ever heard about those guys? Gunnar Hansen, an Icelandic-born American actor who played Leatherface in Texas Chainsaw Massacre, passed away at the age of 68, which is, you know, sad news. In less sad news on this day, President Obama rejected the Keystone Extra-Large Pipeline, which was a pipeline that would have carried oil from Alberta, Canada, all the way through the Midwest to the Gulf of Mexico. Basically a big pipe of pollution, a big tube of destroying the environment. Who would have thought that was a bad idea?
But going off of your first point, that Ebola, I remember it being a huge deal. Just everybody kind of freaking out for a while.
They were like, what if it's a pandemic? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh God,
yeah.
imagine
Good
going through a
thing.
pandemic. That would never happen, right?
Yeah, good thing we avoided that pandemic, right? In some interesting news that's definitely off its time, we are deep. I say deep, we're at the very beginnings of the 2016 presidential election, which we all know was the greatest presidential election I think any of us ever saw, witnessed, or participated in, if you're of United States persona. And on this day, Donald Trump, the US presidential contender, the hopeful guy, is to host Saturday Night Live. It would be his second gig hosting Saturday Night Live following his 2004 debut, and he'll join a small group of politicians to play host while formally campaigning for presidency. I wonder what ever happened to that guy. I wonder what happened.
God, just all the public things about Donald Trump, just everybody supporting him, like Jimmy Fallon patting him on the head like a dog.
It's
all
ridiculous.
Kind of shit.
Yeah, all the the TV like live shows like actively participated in getting him elected, and then went, oh no, he's a bad dude. It's like, why'd you have him on the show if you think he's a bad dude?
Yeah.
Because you knew it'd get ratings, because you don't actually care, because you want the money. You know, so
yeah,
it's a great system in America. I'm really glad that we're not there. The top film in the UK and the US is the same on this weekend. Can you guess as to what it is?
Was it still Hotel Transylvania?
It was not. Something else has come out. A very big film.
A big
It
film.
either came out... No, sorry. It came out the week before, but it's beaten Hotel Transylvania now.
No clue.
It's James Bond Spectre.
That's what I guessed last week.
I know. And you were wrong last
I was
week.
a week off.
Yep, you were. Yeah, I've never seen it. I don't really care for James Bond.
Yeah, I don't care for James Bond either, apart from when it's kind of integrated within Doctor Who in the Pertwee era. That's my James Bond. John Pertwee, best James Bond, hands down.
The top song in the US hasn't changed. It's still The Hills by The Weeknd. However, the top song in the UK has changed, and it's changed to a song that I actually recognise because it was played non-stop. And it's not a song... it's a song that I figured was really old because it's, it's just over 6 years old. But it really dated this episode for me, where I was like, holy crap, how did this episode come out at the same time as this song? But can you guess what song it is? You've probably heard it as well.
Yeah, just give me Adele. I never guess any of these songs.
It's Adele's Hello.
Oh, God.
That
feels like it was... That feels like it came out in like the early 2010s.
I know, doesn't it?
2011, 2012. It feels more like that kind of era.
No. Hello from the Other Side. 6 years ago, that blessed our ears and didn't leave because it was on the radio and in every shop and out of every teenage girl's phone on the bus. Non-stop.
Like, I just heard it played the other night when I was at work, which is just like, oh yeah, this song exists. What the fuck?
And it's not as old as you'd expect. It's crazy. Crazy.
Yeah. It feels like so long ago, but yet just like yesterday at the same time. It's very weird how time works.
Yeah. But that's all I have for the On This Day. It was a relatively busy day, but a relatively quiet one as far as box office numbers and such go. What have you got to say now, Scott? If anything, I don't know if you've got anything to say. Are we just
no, we're just jumping right into it. Let's just get right into the episode.
If you want any trivia, listen to last week's episode.
It would be a bit weird to start off at the part 2, wouldn't it?
Maybe people only care about the war speech.
Yeah, actually,
it's like our I was about to say our most Team of the Cybermen part 2. It was not anymore, but it was our most downloaded episode ever, which is just weird to me.
You don't understand. You will never understand.
I don't understand. Are you kidding me? Of course I understand. I mean, do you call this a war, this funny little thing? This is not a war. I fought in a bigger war than you will ever know. I did worse things than you could ever imagine. And when I close my eyes, I hear more screams than anyone could ever be able to count. And you know what you do with all that pain? Shall I tell you where you put it? You hold it tight till it burns your hand. And you say this: no one else will ever have to live like this. No one else will ever have to feel this pain. Not on my watch.
So, the episode begins with a recap of the last episode, and then we cut to Pod Clara, who's sitting in her lovely wee eggy pod, sleeping away, and then suddenly Clara wakes up in a bed, and we're like, oh, I wonder if this is inside her head or not. It's definitely inside her head. It's kind of similar to when she was a Dalek, don't you think? When she thinks she's in like her own wee like flat, when she's actually inside the Dalek's head. But she starts walking around her flat, you know, she's a bit confused or whatever. She goes into the clock, actually. We look at the clock and it's showing the numbers backwards. Then she blinks and they fix themselves. She gets up, she goes to the bathroom, and she's suddenly in... Oh my god, what's the film called? They put on sunglasses and they can see everyone's an alien.
Oh, They Live.
Yes, she's in They Live when she pulls out her toothpaste, and it's just black and white and says, "This is toothpaste." It reminded me of the scene in They Live when he's looking at all the adverts for stuff, and it's like, "Consume, you will buy this." She, does what you do with toothpaste. It comes out black. She freaks out a bit. Goes through to the TV where we hear audio clips with static television just saying the dialogue from the previous scene where it's like, "I'm going to blow you up, Doctor." "Oh, no, you're not. I'm the Doctor, and I've got a bazooka. Ha ha ha." I think that was it, line for line. She starts, trying to figure out what she has to do. She looks at a newspaper which is full of mainly gibberish, except for the odd line here or there, which is what but Bonnie has been saying. Then suddenly the TV's showing the first-person perspective of the bazooka. Clara grabs the TV and shakes it, which causes I guess she's manipulating the psychic connection between her and her Zygon, and it, causes the Bonnie to jolt to the side and miss the first rocket launch, which, it's a pretty fun little opening scene, I actually think.
Yeah, so do I. I think it's a really clever way of showing the psychic link between the two of them, and Clara cleverly thinking her way out of a situation even though she's kind of incapacitated at this moment. This opening sequence is actually based on a film called The Diving Bell and the Butterfly, which is about a man's life after suffering a massive stroke that left him with a condition known as locked-in syndrome, which sounds absolutely terrifying.
Yeah. Does sound terrifying, doesn't it? If that ever happens to me, just kill me. Just kill me.
Yeah. Yeah, it's quite high concept horror, this opening, I think.
But the scene continues in a way that I really like, in that Clara keeps trying to save the day and stop Bonnie from killing the Doctor. She's thinking of as many ways as she can because shaking the TV is no longer working because Bonnie starts resisting the interference, and so she's controlling her finger and trying to stop it pulling the thing. She goes as far as even biting it, but at that point Bonnie's like, "Nah, screw ya," and she fires the missile, and she blows up the plane, kills the Doctor, and the episode ends. It cuts to the credits. Took me by surprise. I felt like there was a whole bunch. After that, it's just a black screen that says, "This is Doctor Who."
I love how the opening kind of makes you think that they just solve the cliffhanger right away by just ruining it. Like, the first shot she misses, and it's like, oh, there's no need for a cliffhanger then, there's no danger here. The second shot hits the plane, and it's like, oh shit, we're in danger here.
Yeah. It's almost classic Who style, where it picks up right at the cliffhanger, and, it's like, it's pointless. It wasn't a cliffhanger at all. And then it's like, oh no, it actually was. So yeah, that's a really good point, actually. But the actual episode itself opens with a man running down a street, as every good episode of Doctor Who does. If you notice on this street as well, just all over the place is the graffiti for Truth or Consequences. which it's literally it's on like every piece of concrete, and I don't know how I didn't properly notice it until just now, but yeah, it's there. But I actually really like how this bit's shot, where it's done in a oneer, where we're following this guy running up. He runs past a cleaner who's sweeping away hair from people that were zapped by the Zygons. He like trips over him, he runs. As he runs, we then stop on a dude that's walking by, follow him back the way that he's coming, and then we land on Bonnie, who's now walking up the way the guy was running. It's just a really nice little bit of camera work that, you know, you don't actually often see in Doctor Who. So.
Yeah, this episode is really well directed. Obviously, I think a lot of it has some budget issues, but I think making shots like that kind of overcome some of the issues that could be had with a low budget. So the original idea for the opening was to really show that the UK was pretty much completely taken over at this stage, but that got kind of scrapped, which I'm not sure how to feel about that, because it adds to the problem of how does nobody ever mention this ever again in other episodes?
Yeah, it led to me being confused at the first for a little minute, where this guy's like freaking out, especially when he starts like bubbling and becoming a Zygon in a few moments, and the people are just staring at him and they're like just blank faces, like, what? I don't care about this. Yeah. And you don't ever find out why they don't care. You're just meant to assume that they're Zygons.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's never really told to you what's going on with the regular population. Although my question, watching this, a unit, is this the reason unit aren't around anymore? Because we hear at the start of the episode, you know, from the previous episode, Bonnie saying that unit's been taken care of, more or less, referring only to the Doctor that's still alive. And to my knowledge, we don't really see much more of unit after this until Flux, when they come back and they're like, oh, we're not really around anymore because, you know, Snake Guy. But before Snake Guy came around, was this the reason that we don't see unit?
Yeah, the whole situation with unit in the new series is really confusing, because in the Russell T Davies era, it makes it feel like it's a more military operation, whereas in the Moffat era, it feels like an kind of like an underground kind of situation.
It's more MI5,
yeah,
sort of deal, like spies and secrecy.
Yeah, it's very strange how unit has kind of evolved over the years.
Yeah, and then a Snake Guy got involved.
we don't talk about that anymore. It doesn't make fucking sense.
Well, yeah, it does, because you know he was like a snake dude.
Yes.
What else? What else do you need to know?
He had a cool hair. That's it.
Yeah, and he was like a snake guy. Anyway.
But yeah, I would say if this was shot on a bigger budget, we'd just see shots of people in the streets just turning into blobby men or something like that. But obviously you can't have that, so it's just kind of in this one compartmentalized area.
Yeah, or I would have, since, you know, the whole point of Truth or Consequences as a cult is that they want to be Zygons for the Zygons, all the people that are sitting around, I would put them in Zygon makeup.
Yeah.
You just literally just have them Zygons chilling out, and that one dude freaking out like, oh my god, why is everyone a Zygon? Why aren't you like, I don't want to be like you, I want to stay human. Where instead we just get a bunch of bored looking people.
Yeah, it definitely feels like they only have enough in the budget for 2 Zygon costumes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a big costume, you know?
Yeah. I really wish Doctor Who would just have a proper budget, because it's a shame. It's like the biggest UK outported show, and just it never gets the treatment it deserves in terms of budget.
Yeah, but I kind of like, you know, the charm of low budget sci-fi TV. Yeah, but the guy runs into his flat and he like locks the door, and I got a bit confused here as what was happening, because Bonnie chases him up the stairs into his flat, and we get like a blink and you miss it scene or shot through the peephole where we see Bonnie. It looks like she's kind of jiggling the lock, but it's really not clear what she's doing, and then the door opens. And I'm like, okay, I guess it's a really bad lock on this door. But she comes into the flat, you know, they say some dialogue, I don't really remember what they said, and she zaps him in the head. And he like freaks out and runs out, or he starts becoming all blobby. And I thought the makeup for him actually looked pretty decent.
Yeah, it reminds me of 70s Tom Baker era of Hinchcliffe behind the wheel of the show, like his emphasis was just on horror concepts like this, and it's really terrifying actually. Because usually it happens to a human turn into a blobby monster, but here we have a blobby monster who looks like a human turning
back.
into a blobby monster. It's
fun.
quite horrifying in a way.
And then he runs out, and as we said, he stares at the bored teenagers who look at him as he's like, "Oh, help me!" And then he like explodes into a Zygon. I thought the CG of him like glowing and about to explode looked really good, and then the actual transformation sequence looked really kind of bad. But that's by the by. Then Bonnie's recording him, and it's a scene straight out of Signs. You know, the scene with the alien in Signs where it's like stumbling and walking. You never seen Signs?
No.
Oh,
God,
it's when Shyamalan was good. It's back. It's a good Shyamalan film, for the most part. I remember really enjoying it. But it's like the scene for Signs. If you've seen it, you'll understand the reference I'm making with the alien. You know the scene with the alien in the film Signs from the news. That scene from the film Signs. Anyway, he runs off with the Zygon.
Are you getting paid for every time you say the word Signs?
No, shut up. The film Signs, available now on Blu-ray.
Probably on Disney Plus.
Yeah, I think it is. You should watch it on Disney Plus. Only like £6 a month or something. Anyway, they're not paying us either. The Zygon guy runs away. Clara calls up somebody and she's like, "Hey, we got one," as if she's from Ghostbusters. And then she's like, "Okay, I'm gonna go get the Osgood box." And that's the end of the scene. It's a pretty fun little opening scene, I think, if a little bit confusing. So we cut briefly back to Clara, who's watching the TV, and she pauses on the explosion of the plane and sees a little blue dot, and she's like, "Phew, the doctor's safe." And I assumed it was like, oh, the TARDIS somehow came and saved them, because, you know, it's a blue dot, and it's the doctor, and it's an explosion. But no, they just used a parachute and jumped out. I feel like they could have represented it better than a blue smudge. Like, a blue smudge is very, like, this is a TARDIS.
Yeah, they somehow managed to find 2 parachutes and put them on in the time that it took for Bonnie to shoot the second shot.
The doctor can move faster than the speed of light. Remember, if
you're
flux.
right, yeah,
yeah,
yeah, of course, that happened.
Yeah, but
he's the Flash.
They land down on the ground again, or you know, we cut to them on the ground getting out of their parachute, and Osgood is like, "Doctor, why is your parachute the Union Jack?" And the doctor's got the great line of, "Well, it's camouflage, because you know we're in Great Britain," which I like the idea that he thinks the land looks like the Union Jack from the sky.
Speaking of James Bond, this is a James Bond reference to The Spy Who Loved Me from 1977. I think it's from the pre-title sequence from that movie. Camouflage, we're in Britain. That's how the movie opens.
Oh, interesting. I just took it as a funny joke because it's a pretty well written line. Skrr, James Bond. But Osgood's like, "Oh, my glasses are broken." Doctor's like, "Don't worry, I'll fix it with my sonic glasses." And then Osgood makes fun of how bad the sonic glasses are, and the doctor's like, "Yeah, they are bad, but you know what else is bad? An invisible watch." And then Osgood's like, "Haha, I'm going to break the fourth wall now." And I hated it. I really didn't like that bit of dialogue where she's like, "Oh, you're distracting me with nonsense. It's one of your known character traits." I was like, "Shut up." It's very Deadpool, isn't it?
Yeah, it does kind of take her concept a bit too far, because also we know she's there to represent the fanboys and fangirls of the show, and just lines like that make it feel more like he's a fictional character.
Although, what year did Deadpool come out? 2015?
I think 2016?
Maybe 2016.
I think February 2016.
Yeah, 10th of February 2016. So, being meta is very much in the air at the moment. It was very much in vogue, as they like to say. And at the time, I probably loved it. I'm pretty sick of it at this point. For the most part.
I think it just sums up a loss of the Stephen Moffat era. He was very tongue-in-cheek with his writing. Like, there's an episode of Series 8 which opens up with the Doctor explaining to us what the Bootstrap Paradox is.
I liked that. I did like that. It was just this line. Maybe it was how it was delivered or just how it was written. It just felt clunky, you know?
And then next season we have Missy walking out of the TARDIS being, "Oh, I'm Doctor Who." Do you remember that line?
Yeah, but that's Yeah, maybe it's just this one. Maybe it's the fact she says it's a character trait. That's what I don't, because that makes him seem like he's fictional. If it was like, oh, it's one of your personality quirks, you know?
Yeah, but in the same episode I'm talking about with Missy at the end of series 10, Missy goes, "Oh, I'm here with comic relief and exposition."
Yeah, and I wasn't the biggest fan of that either.
Yeah.
So they liked breaking the fourth wall quite a bit in this era, in Capaldi's era especially. But when you're out of ideas, what else can you do?
Which I mean, is Doctor Who is a very silly show. I think it you're kind of allowed to have fun with it in some ways.
Yeah. No, I'm not against it. Just against this line and it.
Yeah, I'm mixed myself.
The scene with the Doctor and Osgood continues and does get a bit better, I think, when they're walking away from the explosion. And Osgood's like, I thought it's a good thing, we didn't get blown up by that big bazooka. And the Doctor's like, what are you talking about? This is us being blown up with a big bazooka. We're in a wreckage and we're walking away from it. What are you talking about? And Osgood is like, I wonder why she hesitated and why she didn't just kill you. It would be the first thing I would do if I was a supervillain. I would just shoot you in the head. I wouldn't ask questions. I wouldn't let you talk. Just bang! 12 times if necessary. Which, Osgood, the Doctor's worst enemy now,
Like, I'm guessing she's saying 12 times if necessary because she's aware of the Doctor having this new regeneration set.
Yeah, it must be, because the Doctor, technically, this version of the Doctor is the first Doctor in the regeneration cycle. Not that it matters anymore.
Yeah, it's all out the window now with the Timeless Child.
I hate that. I really enjoyed the Doctor having a semblance of morality. But, oh well. They're a god now.
So early drafts of his script had the Doctor and Osgood climbing the cliffs and finding a church service in progress where the vicar had just turned into a Zygon. And I imagine this got changed because of budget reasons. Having a room full of people would have cost a lot more money, so they just decided, nah, fuck it.
Yeah, I don't think it needs it either. I feel like that, it just feels like a relative. That seems like a scene that would get cut in editing anyway.
Yeah.
We cut to Bonnie walking down the street for like half a second, and then we're cutting into Clara inside of the pod, and she's like imagining texting. I guess imagine being so good at texting that you can do it without having to know where the keys are. Like, I could do it on a keyboard, but I don't think I could manage it on a touchscreen.
She manages to unlock her phone, find the contact tab, or whatever you want to call it. Then she finds which one is the Doctor, and she manages to type out, "I'm awake." Yeah,
she uses the phone too much. But she does that all and sends off the text, and we cut back to the Doctor. His phone buzzes, and it's a really, really great scene where he gives it to Osgood. Osgood's like, oh, it's from Clara, the Zygon that killed Clara. Let's take a look. It says I'm awake, and the Doctor's like, I'm awake? As in what? A political awakening? Why is she sending me propaganda after blowing me up with a big bazooka? I love how he just assumes immediately that it's the Zygon sending him this text to gloat about something.
I mean, fair enough, because the concept of Clara being inside,
it's also
that's more of a logical explanation.
I really feel like Moffat was having fun using the term "big bazooka" because they've said it about 8,000 times in the past two scenes. Do you think it's weird in this episode, or this series, I guess, that in this episode we have the Doctor thinking Clara's dead and like, a bit upset and grieving for her, in the same series where Clara does actually die?
No, I don't think so. I think it's a good way of representing how much the Doctor actually cares for Clara and how he will have a down spiral if Clara's gone from his life. Yeah, which kind of leads up to her eventual death, even though I don't think her actual death is handled that well.
I think her death is handled great. I think it's the 2 episodes after her death that aren't handled, because she just died. She dies in 2 episodes time. It's literally like not even it's 4 episodes until the end of the series, and it caught me by surprise. I wasn't expecting it when she actually died. But the cop out in the finale was a bit meh.
Yeah. But you know what's nice about this? A doctor who actually cares about the absence of his companions. Because Jodie Whittaker was away from Yaz for most of Flux. And she never really noticed, did she?
Yeah. But, to be fair,
yeah, Yaz
is like wallpaper.
Yeah.
Would you notice it, really? You're like, oh, that's nice. And you kind of forget it goes into the background.
Like basically, the Jodie Whittaker era is, oh no, Yaz has gone missing. Anyway, time for my plotline of this episode.
We gotta stop crapping on the 13th Doctor.
And then Yaz comes back at the end. Is like, oh, there you are.
Yeah. And then Yaz is upset. You know, you left me for 5 minutes at the ice cream shop. But anyway, back on track.
How long do you think it'll be realistically that we keep talking about the 13th Doctor era and all the mistakes?
Never. It's too boggling.
Yes.
So we're back with Bonnie as she's walking in the unit little underground basey bit. She walks by a mirror, and in the reflection we see Clara walk by in the reflection, which I thought was a nice touch. And she goes back, she double checks, and she's like, oh wait, no, it's just me, Bonnie, ha ha ha. And she goes over to the portrait of the first Doctor. In case you missed it in the last episode, here it is again. She pulls it open and there's a safe behind it. She puts a code in, and unfortunately, again, I think, the budget played into this. She moves the safe and you see the door move before it's properly unlocked, and then it opens up. But that's classic Doctor Who sets right there. She takes out a laptop and she moves. And I just want to say at this point, I really, 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 really like Jenna Coleman as a villain in this episode. She does such a good job being a different character entirely with Bonnie. She's way more stilted and, robotic almost with her movements, and excellent to have her as a villain.
Yeah, it's honestly her best acting performance in the show, which is, she's really fucking good as the villain and Clara, and just differentiated two of them. It's a great performance. And the mirror shot where Clara is briefly seen in the mirror reminds me of Last Night of Soho.
Shh, spoilers. I've not seen it yet.
Well, you've seen the trailers of it where she's looking in the mirror at the woman. You know what about it. But the first Doctor portrait is really random because the first Doctor never really met Unit. If there's any Doctor that should have been up there, it's John Pertwee. He actually worked with Unit.
Yeah,
it's very
but
bizarre.
The first Doctor was one of Capaldi's favourites, though, wasn't it? It's the Doctor that he regenerates with when he regenerates. So there's some poetry there. It's like it rhymes. It's like poetry.
You just fucking reminded me of the fucking Twice Upon a Time. I hated that episode so much.
I loved it. I genuinely loved it.
I will get to that when we get to it.
Like the Doctor Who movie, I'll convince you it's good.
I mean, to be fair, you did quite do a good job. You did a great job with the Doctor Who movie. I love that movie now.
Yeah, it's so good. I want to watch it again.
We should do a second podcast on
it. So there's a really great scene with the Doctor and all. I think this is a really good second part episode. It's really solid. Where the Doctor and Osgood approach some policemen officers because they had to make an appearance in a Doctor Who episode. They had to find a way to squeeze them in, and here they are. Where the Doctor's like, hey, our plane exploded, did you see? And the police officers just stare at them because, of course, there's Zygons, although it's not being communicated well at all. And the Doctor's like, oh, well, actually, we're okay, bye-bye. And they walk away as we see the police car starts backing up behind them. And Bonnie calls for a wee FaceTime chat, and they have a pretty fun chat together, where we learn lots of things, Scott, don't we? We learn lots of things.
Oh yeah, wink, wink.
Wink. And this actually plays into me thinking, or my opinion, that Jenna Coleman's really great in this because she's managing to get that really static performance of Bonnie whilst also having the winking glimmer of Clara peeling through every now and then. But she's saying a bunch of stuff to the Doctor, we'll kill you, and where's the Osgood box, etc., etc. And the Doctor's like, oh, why are you winking at me? And she's like, what? I'm not winking at you. And the Doctor has a great pun. Actually, I've just remembered the pun. where the doctor's like, oh, come on, why are you calling me? You've got to have a plan. You wouldn't invade a whole planet without a plan. That's why they call it planets. It's like, that's like excellent pun.
Yeah, and he also calls her Zygella, which isn't a great pun, because it's obviously a reference to Nigella the cook. Don't see the comparison, other than Nye sounds like Zy.
Yeah. No, planet.
That's the only reference.
Planet is a much better pun.
So when he's talking to the policeman, he introduces himself as Dr. John Disco again. And this whole Dr. John Disco and Dr. Funkenstein is a reference to the clones of Dr. Funkenstein, which is a 1976 album from the band Parliament.
Bet you that was a reference Capaldi wanted to make. That sounds like something he'd be into.
No, it's a reference made by the guy who wrote it. I can't remember his name
Moffat
right now.
and some other guy.
Give me a second. Peter Harness.
Interesting.
Yes. And the wink in Morse code reminds me of the Ninth Doctor in the second Big Finish audio box set, where he's kind of frozen.
Yes. He's literally frozen.
Yeah, and he starts winking at Morse code at the robot lady.
Yeah.
Which is
Yeah.
I love that. Do you think it was an intentional reference to that audio story?
Well, considering it came out 6 years before the audio story, I doubt it. But it is about time travel.
Yeah, but surely the writers have access to their own TARDIS.
Yeah. Otherwise, how would they come up with all these ideas? They couldn't. They couldn't just make this up.
Like I don't think it's just the actors and directors who have use to the TARDIS. They can anyone can use the TARDIS. Yeah. Everyone on set, the TARDIS is real.
So the Doctor and Osgood are driving away in the car, and they're like, Bonnie's going to be looking at her mind for all the secrets Clara has now, and the Doctor's like, haha, she's going to get stuck in Clara's mind, the fool, ha ha ha. And we see Capaldi with a big old grin on his face, which Osgood notes, and he's like, oh, it's a dazzling smile I have, isn't it? And then suddenly there's like a breaking news thing that Osgood watches on YouTube, and it's a 5-second clip, and it takes like 10 seconds to load. It was like really suddenly awkward pacing where we're watching a screen buffer. I'm like, why are we waiting for this to buffer? Just let it play. Like,
and also the news report is, an alien was spotted in South London, and it was posted on the internet. Okay. And
I don't understand why it's there, and why did we watch it buffer?
It's like saying, there was a bomb at South London. A video was posted on the internet. Anyway, on to the next news story.
Yeah, it's like the biggest news ever, and they're like, "Hey, here's a 5-second clip on YouTube." And Osgood the Doctor needs a new data plan because that's atrocious.
And also it has these kind of like wavy lines you would see on old analog
not
television.
an LCD screen. Yeah,
it's very bizarre. But also, Peter Capaldi's smile really reminds me of the Terminator in Terminator 2, where he's trying to pretend to be human and he's just putting on this really terrible smile.
Yeah. Then we have another really strong scene with Clara versus Bonnie, where Bonnie goes up to Clara's pod, taps on it, and we see her face appear on the TV inside Clara's mind apartment. And Clara tries changing the TV, but there's nothing on but cats. And Bonnie's like, there's no point switching the TV because, this is basically just your eyes. And Clara's like, hey, well, you're ugly. What do you want? Bonnie's like, I'm going to get all the information out of your head right now. And Clara's like, go on then, do it. I dare you. To which Bonnie's unable to do it, and Clara's like, well, guess what, my brain's bigger. And she makes Bonnie flash into a Zygon for a second, in case you hadn't figured out she's a Zygon by now for somehow. But yeah, I thought it was a pretty fun scene anyway, where you see Bonnie turn into the Zygon, and then come back. And they start talking about, Bonnie's start like, oh, I'm going to kill you then. And Clara's like, well, go on, kill me. He's like, well, maybe I won't kill you, but I'll ask you some questions. And Bonnie's like, well, okay, ask me questions. I'll just lie. And Bonnie's like, well, you can't lie because we have the same heartbeat, see? And she finds her pulse instantly, and it's the strongest pulse in the world on her wrist. And Clara's blood pressure must be insane.
Yeah, the whole human lie detector was Moffat's idea, and it works in context, but I just don't like the idea of lie detectors being based on heartbeats. It doesn't make any sense. Is there any actual science based on that? Because somebody could just have a really rapid heart.
I guess the idea behind it is when you're lying, you become nervous, and when you're nervous, your heart rate increases. Your palms get sweaty. You're like, oh my god, I don't know if I can lie right now.
Spaghetti.
Yeah, exactly. But if I was Clara and had been traveling around with the Doctor and was now kidnapped by a Zygon, I don't think lying's going to be too hard for me to do. Yeah. I feel like it's going to be my go-to survival method, and I'm going to try and not be nervous about lying, because I'd be more nervous about telling the truth.
But yeah, I really like, obviously Jenna Coleman is playing against, opposite herself, but also at the same time opposite no one.
Yeah.
She just, which is, she has to remember her performance previously in order to act alongside each other, or think about her performance in the future as well. It's kind of insane.
Yeah, she's really good in this episode. Well, it's, I think she's good in most episodes. She's like a really solid actor, but her character was kind of bleh. She's really entertaining in this episode.
Yeah, this is definitely the juiciest stuff she's ever had to do in the show, I think. Why are you smiling?
The word juicy. I was like, ugh.
But yeah, it's probably because I would imagine it's like, oh, she's leaving the show. Give her something for her acting reel.
Yeah. I liked her in the Rings of Akatan, where she's like, this is the most important leaf ever. But she says it with a lot more compassion than I just did.
I haven't seen that episode since like 2013.
Solid episode.
9 years ago.
One of Matt Smith's best speeches. I just hate that they undermined it with Clara's speech, but Clara does give a good performance. I just really liked Matt Smith's speech.
The only thing I remember from that speech is he makes a derp face at one point.
I don't remember the derp face. I don't remember that. I just remember him being like, have all my memories, go and have them all, and that speech being incredible. Underrated episode. I'll say it now. Rings of Akatan.
I will share the derp face, and you can put it up on screen now.
Yeah.
I'll give you extra work.
Yeah, great. I wouldn't say that's as much a dirt face as it is an unfortunate pause. I feel like I could do that in every episode of Doctor Who and get somebody half blinking doing something. But it is a good photo, I'll give you that.
It's wonderful.
Much like the Rings of Akatan. Clara is back talking to Bonnie in a... we were questioning before the lie detector model, but I still think it's a really engaging... interrogation almost. So you've got the heartbeat sound in the background just subtly going do 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 do, which adds all this tension to the conversation, where Bonnie, there we go. There's too many characters. There's like 4. Bonnie is interrogating Clara, and she's like, "Okay, first thing, you can see if I'm lying. I will slaughter you." And she uses the word slaughter, which I thought was, someone read a thesaurus. She says, "I will slaughter you if you tell me a lie. Am I lying?" Clara's like, "Nope, of course you're not lying because I can feel your heartbeat. That's the truth. I'm now scared." And Clara's like, "Okay, so where's the Osgood box?" Bonnie's like, "Where's the Osgood box?" And Clara's like, "Oh, okay, it's at Unit HQ under the Tower of London." And Bonnie is like, "Oh, okay, cool. Right back at the first episode, so we can use the same set. That's really convenient. I'm glad about that. That's good. Okay, next question. How do I get it?" It's like, "Oh, well, only the Osgood had access. Who else had access?" "Well, the Doctor put it there. He didn't want anyone to touch it." "Don't avoid the question. Who had access?" "Well, the Doctor did. And, well, I guess I did as well." Bonnie's like, oh, cool. So you had access, which means I had access. But what's the code?" And Clara's like, "Oh, I didn't know a code." "What do you mean code?" And basically... Bonnie has always had access to the Osgood box, and it's been in the room that she's been in for most of the time, and she's just never found it.
Yeah. Also, I think the idea of the body print, obviously the body print of Clara is the key to opening the door, but there must have been some kind of like safe lock behind that, so rogue Zygons don't wander in, right? Or is this deliberate?
It's probably deliberate. But do you not think that it's kind of short-sighted of the Doctor to make Clara access to it? Like, why would she ever need access to the Osgood box?
Like last season, she threatened to throw the TARDIS keys into lava. That's not somebody you trust.
Yeah. But Clara does bring up a very important point here, where she says that there are 20 million Zygons and 7 billion humans. If the Zygons go to war, they cannot win against the humans. They're just simply outnumbered. To which Bonnie goes, I don't care, we will die fighting. Which is really the crux of her entire position as leader of the Truth or Consequences movement. Is she doesn't actually want to rule the world. She just wants everyone to die fighting. And it gave a lot of dimension to her character. And there's a scene coming up, and I think it's part of the war speech where they're like, if you press that button, you'll die. And she's like, I don't care. That's what she said. She's like, I simply do not care about that. She's motivated entirely by wanting her freedom, regardless of the cost to anybody else or herself.
Yeah, it's not very often we get like a multi-layered. I don't even call her a villain in this episode. I think some part of her is like reasonable. I can understand her. I hesitate to call her a villain. That's how good of a villain she is.
It's just a well written episode. It's crazily well written.
It's like classic Malcolm Hulk Doctor Who with the Silurians. They're not bad guys. They just want to retake the planet because it's their planet. They were here first.
Yeah.
And the Doctor has to stop the war between humans and Silurians, which is kind of what's going on here.
The Doctor and Osgood are walking through tunnels, I guess. And Osgood's like, hey, Doctor's like, hey, Osgood, what's your first name? And Osgood's like, hey, but what's your first name? And we get the shocking revelation that we thought we were going to get in the episode The Name of the Doctor, but it finally gets concluded here with the inversion of the Zygons. The Doctor's name is Basil.
Yeah, Basil Fawlty.
Yeah.
That's his full name.
Yep, that's his name, and it's about time we had an answer to it. But yeah, Basil, that's his name, Basil. So we'll be calling him Basil from here on out in every episode. What did you think about Basil's latest adventure in Flux? Anyway, we find out that
I have a question though. Am I the only one who doesn't give a shit about the Doctor's name? Just
probably.
His name is the Doctor.
It's the sort of thing. When I was younger, and watching Doctor Who, I was really intrigued by the question, what's the name of the Doctor? Who really are you? But as time goes on, it's not an answer I want.
Yeah.
I like the mystery of who really are you, Doctor? What's your real name? But there's no answer that you can give that will be satisfying to that question, other than Basil.
The only answer that's really canon is
Basil.
There's a book written in the 1970s, The Making of Doctor Who, whatever the fuck it's called, and there's a point where the Doctor's real name is a mathematical symbol. This was written by Terence Dix, who came up with the terms Time Lords and Gallifrey, so that's the only canon answer I accept. It's some random symbols that cannot be translated in English.
But if you did find a way, it would translate to Basil. Anyway, Basil and Osgood are walking down the hallway, and we find out that Osgood's first name's Petronella, and Basil's like, okay, let's just use our go back to the names before. And so Basil and Osgood walk into the shop where we see the Zygon from before, and he's like in full Zygon makeup, runs around the corner, and can suddenly turn back to being human because the Zygon costume's too complicated and hard to put on. So he turns kind of semi into human. He's still got the splodges around him. But I thought the whole idea was that Bonnie forced him to be a Zygon forever. But I guess not. I guess just for 10 minutes, he was a Zygon.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's just that he's fighting it, but he
Maybe.
can't quite get there. He can sometimes try and do it, but it's kind of like killing him inside. I don't really know.
Possibly. But he zaps at Basil and runs off, and they follow him through the shop. And then we cut away back to Bonnie and Clara. It's a fine scene, but
the fact that he's in the shop just reminds me of that Doctor Who Flux moment where the Sontaran is in the shop and he goes, yes. Both the Sontarans and the Zygons are designed by the same man, so it feels like bloody Chibnall would have written in the chocolate gag here. which I really hate. It was so fucking dumb.
You remember it though. Well, that's the first step. We go to Bonnie as she gets approached by, what's her name? Kate. Is it Kate? Yes.
Yes.
She gets approached by Kate. Kate Stewart being like, "Hey, what up? I'm from North America, and I'm definitely a Zygon." And Osgood, oh my god, why do I say Osgood? Bonnie is all like, "Oh, that checks out with me. Okay, I'm going back to HQ. You can come with me." And Kate's like, "Awesome, that worked out well for me. Let's go." That's the scene. I guess the idea is the Zygons, specifically Truth or Consequence Zygons, are so full of themselves that they expect that none of them could ever be killed or outsmarted or outmaneuvered, and they don't even question whether or not Kate's a Zygon. But I feel like, maybe they should have at least done a check. Be like, "Hey, real quick, turn into a Zygon." That's our whole deal.
Yeah.
Like,
I think this scene was just in here because it's just a reminder that Kate is a player in this story. It's 24 minutes into this episode and Kate hasn't appeared yet. And it's just like, hey, remember Kate isn't a Zygon. Remember, audience. Remember last week? Yes.
I remember.
And in that one scene, she does more than she does in the entirety of Doctor Who Flux.
Yeah. But she didn't figure out anybody was a snake guy.
Ugh.
We're then back with Basil and Osgood as they're in the shop, and the Zygon's like, get away from me, this hurts too much. I didn't want this. I didn't want to be part of a war. I just wanted to live. It's I think really well performed by whoever this actor is. I didn't catch his name in the credits. And, there's a great line where the Doctor's like, "It's okay, we're on your side, we don't want a war either." And he goes, "I'm not on anybody's side." He wants no part in any of the conflict. He just wanted to, have a peaceful life. And he ends up, zapping himself in the head and killing himself. And it's a really good scene.
And it just, again, feels so realistic to just real life, There's always innocent people in these wars who just want to live in these countries, and it's just like, we can't live here because other people are provoking war and hatred and panic and paranoia and just... Yeah.
Yeah, which...
But Doctor Who is never political, that.
Yeah, no, never political, but at the time of recording, there currently isn't a war in Ukraine with Russia. Well, there's a little bit of one, but only with Russian-backed rebels. But I saw on Reddit today, so take it with a pinch of salt, that the German news media got a leaked document from the CIA that Russia's planning on invading on the 16th. So, this will come out after the 16th, won't it?
Oh, God.
So,
yeah.
Fingers crossed everything's all right. Or it's a nuclear wasteland, one or the other.
The really depressing thing about this is that, messages like this is always going to be relevant to mankind, and it's never going to change. Really, especially the Doctor's war speech, it still feels relevant. It still feels super, super prescient, and I just can't get over how well written it is. It's so good. Oh my God. And that's just a sign of a really good script. It's always going to be relevant.
The test of time.
People are just like, I was watching the Silurians the other day, the 1970 classic Silurians, and there's a pandemic across London, and there's people who just be like, I don't believe in vaccines.
Yeah.
Getting a vaccine is just stupid, and it's like, this is today. This is
well, I was watching Doctor Strangelove recently again, and that's a film about building tensions between the US and Russia because a conspiracy theorist who thinks that fluoride in the water is turning people into communists is also a general in the army and gets a hold of nuclear codes and sends off the attack signal. It's, Alex Jones, if he was in the army, I was like, how were people in the 60s talking about fluoride in the water, and we're still talking about it whenever Alex Jones was relevant. I don't know, 15,000 years ago.
Science fiction needs to be political. There is no way around it. I don't think it needs to be political always, but it should be political. There's no need to be like, oh, Doctor Who is woke because it's
There's the thing is, why do we tell stories? We tell stories to get across messages, be it off, love's a good thing, or, maybe don't murder people, or, this is a bad guy, look at all the bad things this guy does. It's about telling a message so that you can relate to it, and if you're just doing it for the superficial, here's a story, it's never going to latch on, you're never going to remember it, it's going to be one of the billion stories that get forgotten. But you get an episode like this where it jabs at the political, and you remember it, and everyone's like, oh my god, this actually made me feel something. Do you know why it made you feel something? Because it's goddamn true.
Yeah, it's one of the most famous Doctor Who episodes is Genesis of the Daleks, and that's an episode where a doctor contemplates committing genocide against the entirety of the Daleks and being like, I can't kill the Daleks because that would make me worse than them.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why we don't like Jodie's Doctor too much, because she was like, I can kill the Daleks, it does make me better than them. And even in the latest New Year special, when the Daleks are like, you killed us, and she's like, yeah, and I do it again.
Yeah, it's everything comes back to Jodie in the end, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does, because her series is not her fault.
Not Jodie, yes.
Chibnall, obviously. Yes. We're talking about Chibnall and his writing. Oh my god.
God damn it.
But anyway, the Doctor and Osgood run into Kate, and the Doctor is immediately like, oh, this is a Zygon, I'm not getting duped here. And he's like, oh, hi, Kate, how are you doing? I heard you had died. And Kate's like, hey, come with me, back to the Black Archive. We've got only one set left, let's go. And the Doctor's like, okay, fair dues, let's go.
Okay, so obviously we know that Kate isn't a Zygon here, she's just pretending to be one. But I read the Doctor as being like, okay, I know this isn't a Zygon, but I'm going to pretend subconsciously that I think it's a Zygon.
He's 4D chessing it. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that the Zygons don't become suspicious when I don't become suspicious of Kate.
Sure, why not? Why not?
It makes sense, right?
Yeah. So the Doctor, Basil and Osgood and Kate are now in the poddy section of Zygonville, and they're like, hey, look at all these pods, and where's Clara's one? Wait, it's not here anymore, because previously, in a scene that I just skipped over, I'm just realizing, Bonnie has walked into Unit HQ with Clara's pod and a couple of Zygons. Anyway, back to Basil. They're like, hey, where's Clara's pod? And then the two Zygons are like, hey, we're gonna kill you now, we're Zygons. Which I guess we already knew, but Osgood hadn't figured out, because she goes, oh my god, I think they're Zygons. I'm like, how did you not get that? Anyway.
The Doctor clearly knows, because he's just sarcastically like, oh, you dirty little monkeys.
Yeah. And we cut back to Bonnie, who gets inside the Unit HQ. She finds the Osgood box. She's like, haha, I'm about to kill everybody. Oh, wait, there's two Osgood boxes. Oh, of course, they're Osgoods. There's two Osgoods, two boxes. Kate calls her on the phone. She's like, yo, I got the Doctor. To which Bonnie's like, yeah, cool. Keep him alive, because I got some questions. Hey, Doctor, so there's two boxes. Which one do I press? And the Doctor's like, well, I'm not going to tell you, because that would spoil the fun, wouldn't it? I quite like the design of the boxes. I think they look kind of they're very Time Lord-esque, which makes me think the Doctor. Well, the Doctor did help design them, didn't he? Because he was part of the ceasefire. So yeah.
I guess the Doctors helped design it. 3 of them.
It's also kind of similar to the box that was used, the Doomsday device for destroying Gallifrey. That was just a box before it transformed into the big red button, remember? Very similar design idea to that. I just got that. So that's probably where the whole design came from, actually. Yeah.
More than likely, you know?
Yeah. You making that 3 Doctors line triggered my memory, and I was like, oh, yeah, of course. So Bonnie has the Doctor on the phone. She's like, so which box do I need to press to get everybody looking like a Zygon? And the Doctor's like, well, I'm not going to tell you. If you want to start a war, you're going to have to, figure it out. And she's like, well, tell me or I'm going to kill Clara. And he's like, nope, not going to happen. And he's like, okay, cool, kill Clara. And he's like, okay, fine, it's the blue one. The blue box does it. The blue box makes everyone a Zygon. And then there's a really great moment with Bonnie where she's about to press the button but hesitates. And she's like, wait, are you lying to me? And the doctor's like, no, I'm not lying to you. Press the button. Go on. She presses the button, flips up, and we see truth or consequences as the two buttons, which I like as the concept, but confuses me in that did they know Truth or Consequences was a terrorist organization when they were making these boxes at the end of the 50th anniversary? Because isn't Truth or Consequences a new cell that's just been rising up in power, or is it just a coincidence where they're like, this is a funny thing to do? Like that bit starts making me question the internal logic of the episode.
Yeah, the whole timeline and world building is a bit confusing in this whole story, honestly.
Yeah, but it's cool though.
Yeah.
It's a cool moment.
Yeah, and of course the Doctor picks the blue box first. Yeah. It's like, oh, duh.
Yeah. And so she's like, oh, gosh darn, which button do I press? Bring the Doctor to me. And the two Zygons start walking up. And then, surprise, Kate shoots him in the back. What? She's been a human the whole time? I had no idea. I thought she was dead. And the Doctor's like, hey, Kate, how did you survive? After shooting the two Zygons in the back of the head, and we push in on Kate's face as we flash back, and the way that she survives is she also shot the other Zygon. I was like, does that require a flashback? That seems like a really easy cop out. But she just went bang, shot him dead. Like,
and she says 5 rounds rapid in response. Do you know what reference?
I don't.
Think about the demons. Chap with the wings over there. 5 rounds rapid.
Oh.
It's what the Brigadier says when he shoots Bok.
See, I can tell you a grand total of 0 lines of dialogue from the demons. I remember the characters and the plot. I couldn't tell you a single line of dialogue. But I'm glad
you must remember.
I'm glad our boy Bok. At least. How could I forget Bok? I'm glad our boy Bok got a wee cheeky reference to him getting shot at. And then we find out that inside the red box is a poisonous gas that turns Zygons inside out, and that, you know, Kate was like, why did you leave it with us if you didn't want us to ever use it? And the Doctor's like, it's a deterrent. It's like a nuclear bomb. I'm sure nobody will use those. Ha ha ha. Remember, this is being recorded before the war happens. And, the Doctor's like, you agreed to using it and then having your memory wiped, which, you agreed to as well. That's why we had the Osgoods. They kept the secrets. They kept the peace. They were the buffer. And now everything's falling apart. Just to catch you up on the plot in case you've not been paying attention for the past episode and a half. And then Kate's like, okay, let's go back to Unit HQ. So we've got to wrap this episode up now. Let's go. and they run off.
There's a nice another reference to Harry Sullivan, who created the Zygon gas, who was the 4th Doctor companion. But also, just before that, Kate apologizes to the Doctor because he wouldn't approve of shooting the Zygons dead. And the Doctor replies with, why is there always mass murder in peace negotiations? Which I think is a nice little reference to the Silurians. At the end of the Silurians, the Doctor decides to put the Silurians back into hibernation and then decides to wake them up. He decides to wake them up one by one, just so he can try and get through to them easier, because a whole group of them is harder to get through. And at the end of an episode, the Brigadier destroys all the Silurians without the Doctor's consent, and it just feels like a nice little moment where Kate is basically her father here, and the Doctor still feels that kind of anger towards the Brigadier in a way.
Yeah. We cut back to the Unit HQ. We're about to come up to the war speech, but this is where we get the really great line where Clara says, "It's no good, Bonnie. You can't win." And Bonnie just looks at Clara and goes, "I don't care. It's not about winning. That's not the point." We spoke about it earlier, but I think it's such a good line. Anyway, now we've got like 15 minutes of the Doctor's war speech. Before we watch it again, to just refresh our opinions on it, whoever's listening to this, Susan, you'll know what cold open I use, how I cut it down for a cold open. I have no idea how I'm going to cut this war speech down for the cold. It's like, there's no way I can use the whole thing. I'll probably just use the end bit where he's like, I forgive you. How about that? You know, because that bit really punches you in the heart. But I would put the whole thing in if I could. But that is, you know, more than a 1 minute clip. Like,
yeah, like this whole speech was like 5 pages long in the first draft of the script, which is like insane to just give a character that much lines. And it's Peter Capaldi, and this probably took like 12 hours to shoot the whole thing. It's insane to just think about.
Yeah, and it's his performance in this scene is spectacular. Like, you know, this is the scene where he became the Doctor for everybody that was still watching, you know, that hadn't given up.
Yeah,
that's the hardest thing with Capaldi. And like, his episodes previous are good, but if you're not sold on him at the start, you don't get sold on him until this, which is episode 8 of his 2nd season. Like, it came so late in his run, but such a good goddamn moment.
And to go back to Jodie Whittaker, I just wish she had a moment that was similar to this. I don't mean similar in exactly the same way.
Just
but
like every Doctor up until this most recent. I mean, maybe this last special that she's got is going to change everything around, but who knows? But everything up until Jodie's Doctor, every Doctor had a moment where, you know, they became the Doctor, essentially. For me, with Eccleston, it's just this once everybody lives, or even when his first scene was just run, or maybe his speech to his speech to the melting plastic, you know, when he's talking about the things he's seen in the Time War and stuff like that in his very first episode.
To me, Eccleston's first moment of this is the Doctor was in the episode Dalek, when he's shouting at the Dalek in his cage.
Yes.
That episode was spectacular.
That is an excellent episode, definitely. For David Tennant, I don't know. Instantly, he became the Doctor. He just embodied him.
Like the end of that episode where he quotes the end of that episode. Yeah, the end of that episode where he quotes The Lion King for me was like, yeah, this is the Doctor.
Yeah, it's
with Matt Smith. I think it was the speech at Stonehenge.
Yes, that was really it. The end of his first season, the big speech at Stonehenge. That was, and then he went on to do a big speech every other episode, and it was brilliant.
Yeah.
And then obviously this is the moment for Capaldi, and Jodie just hasn't. I hit my mic. Jodie just hasn't had that. I can't name you one speech she's had.
Yeah,
like
she's had a few slight glimmers, like when in the Cyberman episode with Mary Shelley, she's like, I have to let this guy die in order to protect the future, but it's like 1 minute at that. It's not really a defining moment.
What Jodie's Doctor suffers from is a lot of moments that don't feel like the Doctor. You know, it's the, I can't talk to you right now, Graham, because I'm a bit too awkward still. I don't want to have this heart to heart. That was the moment she could have been the Doctor. That was a moment right there where she could have been the Doctor. When she uses, hey, Master, you've got brown skin. Guess what? Here come some Nazis. That's not the Doctor, you know. Oh, hey, Daleks, genocide. Oh, hey, Daleks again, genocide. Oh, hey, Daleks again, genocide. None of that feels like, and it feels like such a cop-out, because those are moments you can turn into Doctor Who moments where she finds a way out. She uses her creativity and her intelligence to, you know, either talk her way out of it or to smart her way out of it. But instead, it's the, I don't want to think about what I'm writing.
Yeah, honestly, the only great thing about Jodie Whittaker's Doctor is Jodie Whittaker herself.
Yes. Yeah, she's great. She's really good, and she's a really, really solid actor. But yeah, she's been given the worst material. So sad.
So Peter Capaldi starts off his speech basically like a game show host with an American accent, which is something he improvised on the day, the American accent, which really works because if you think about Truth or Consequences, it's a game show as established.
Yeah.
And the American accent really works. It feels like a game show, which is what war is to some people.
Yeah, to me it feels like the Doctor, because he has this look on his face when he looks at Kate when she steps up to the box where he's like, oh my god, where he's like, "Why? Oh, I cannot believe this is happening to me right now." And then it's that, the bit that Osgood said at the start of the episode, where she says, like, "You're talking nonsense to distract me about how scared I am right now." Right, he's putting on that dumb accent to, try and mask how much he's panicking at the moment. Because he's like, "Oh my god, how am I going to get out of this one?" Sort of thing. It's a really, really smart little note to add onto your performance. And he goes on to explain that inside the red box, we've got the poisonous gas that'll kill all the Zygons, and also the detonator for a nuclear warhead buried underneath London that will wipe London off the map. A fun choice. And in the other box, we've got the, I don't know, whatever it is that'll turn all the Zygons back into Zygons, or it'll turn them all human and they'll stay human forever. That's the truth or the consequence. Ha ha ha. It's a pretty fun choices, I think. Oh, what a line! This might take us a while to get through because it's like killer line after killer line. But Bonnie's like, "This isn't a fair choice. You've engineered this to, work in your favor." To which, Capaldi's like, "No, you forced me to do it like this." And Bonnie's like, "Well, that's not fair." And he goes, "Oh, my bad. It's not fair. I didn't realize it wasn't fair." But that's kind of life, isn't it? Life isn't fair. My TARDIS doesn't work properly, which it does, Doctor. You just don't know how to fly it. And he doesn't have a personal tailor. And Bonnie's like, "Well, that doesn't equate." And she's like, "Well, no, those are facts. I'm just listing off things that have happened." And he's like, "You just want cruelty for the sake of cruelty. More cruelty does not beget cruelty." And it's such a killer line where he's like, "You're being evil because evil things have happened to you."
Yeah. Again, it's just so realistic. Like, forget about the fact that these are blobby monsters. It's just real life,
Also, we're bigging up Capaldi, Jenna Coleman. Oh my god. Everyone's firing on all cylinders.
And Jenna Coleman in 2 instances playing 2 separate characters, which is crazy.
And then, like, 3 lines later in Capaldi's speech, "The only way that people can live in peace is if they're willing to forgive." Oh my god, it's literally every single line is just a killer point. And I love that line specifically. That line is so good. Oh my god. Jesus Christ. It's so good. Capaldi starts talking a bit more, and he's like, "Okay, so what is it that you actually want to get out of this?" And to which Bonnie's like, "I want a war. I want a war to come from this." And he's like, "Okay, cool. So what about after the war? Say you win. What then? You're going to live in a society? You're going to have houses? You're going to have jobs? People are going to play music? How are they going to play a violin? Who's going to make the violins?" He's like, "You've not thought about any of this, have you? You've not thought about how a society actually works and all the moving functions. You're just a tantruming child. And like every tantruming child, you don't know what you want." So it's like, oh my god, Jesus, it's I'm just gonna be repeating it, so well written, but it's like how can you not listen to that and go, Jesus Christ?
And yeah, Peter Capaldi's favourite part about this scene in particular is it reminds him of 70s Doctor Who, and I'm going to go back to the Silurians, which kind of dealt with a similar topic of Silurians wanting to take over a planet for themselves because they were here first and all that. But in that episode, the Doctor doesn't really get to have a speech like this in a way. He's like, "Hey, you can live in the hot parts of the planet and live in harmony with the humans, but the war kind of begins, and he doesn't get a chance to be like the peacemaker between the 2 species. Here, the Doctor is the peacekeeper between the 2 species, and we actually get to see the arguments brought to the table, what he brings, which is really compelling, and Capaldi completely sells it.
Yeah, I think the thing that really plays into it as well is my favorite thing in Doctor Who. People sit down and talk, and don't get enough of it, because when it happens, it's so good. It's so much better than the Doctor pulling out a sonic screwdriver, an explosion happens, and the day is done. Job succeeded. Actually, this is a 15-minute monologue that the Doctor has to do to get through this situation, and you're on the edge of your seat the entire time.
Yeah, the Doctor is a 2,000-year-old man, taking away all the timeless child nonsense, but he's a 2,000-year-old man, and he's seen so many different kind of wars, and he was a participant in his
which is
biggest
about
war.
to come up in his war speech, and
Yeah.
that bit really hits you. Oh my god.
And Pierre Capaldi does such a good job of making it seem like, yeah, he's speaking from experience. It just feels so authentic and so realistic, and it's just like, I just wish a lot more of Doctor Who would kind of like have us kind of sit down and be like, yeah, but why do you do the things you do, Mr. Badman?
What's motivating you? You know?
Yes.
Why are you? Yeah. Let's talk about that, and let's have a discussion of opinion, you know, and clash heads, because you know I'm actually a really smart scientist dude, you know, not an action hero. But
yeah, like I'm fine with some villains being like, oh haha, I want to take over the world just because.
Yeah.
But
you can't have
sometimes
not every episode can have people chatting, otherwise it won't feel special. But at least more than one in a blue moon. Come on, like.
Which is why I always like it when Davros comes in, because usually he and Davros sometimes have a conversation just about morals and philosophy.
I really loved the Davros episode with Capaldi as well, when they're just sitting down chatting. Again, Capaldi must have really loved next season. Is it this season with? No, it's next season.
Yeah, it was this season, at the very start of his season.
Yes. Well, this season and next season, he must have loved doing, because it's a lot of Capaldi gets to monologue and chat, whereas his first season was garbage. But
you hit on a really, really good point. The Doctor isn't the action hero. He's a scientist. He's a man who uses his brain and intelligence to get out of situations.
Yeah, and sometimes his magic wand.
Yeah, he doesn't need to use his magic wand.
No, yeah, he needs to use his brain. And that's one of the things that I really liked. Like, just flashing back to when we were watching The Woman Who Fell to Earth, and we get the first glimpse of Jodie's Doctor, and she's like this engineer, tinkerer Doctor. I'm like, you could do so much with that concept of, you know, it's now not just the Doctor who can talk, it's the Doctor that can build and create tools to get out. But they never did anything with it.
Like, going back to Doctor and the Silurians, I keep on mentioning this because I just watched it the other day, but there's an entire episode of Doctor Who and the Silurians where he's just sitting in a lab trying to cure, like, a human disease, and it's very compelling stuff. It's like, yeah, the Doctor's a scientist. Yeah. People keep on forgetting that.
Yeah. But anyway, the speech keeps going on, and the Doctor's like, okay, so once you've got this dream society of yours, what's everyone going to do with people like you? You know, the people that cause trouble, the people that cause wars. What's going to happen to you in this ideal society that you want to create?
Yeah, earlier on he says, break the cycle. And this is a point, it's just a cycle. It's just going to keep going on and on until somebody breaks it.
Yeah, break the wheel. That's what he says. It's the never-ending, history. Everything, nothing changed. No, what is it? What's the phrase? Hang on, let me actually get my brain working here for a second. It's everything stays the same, just the technology gets better. Yeah. You know, and that flashes back to what we were chatting about earlier when I was talking, you know, Doctor Strangelove and whatever it was you were watching, Doctor Who, and they both still feel relevant to this day, and they are 60 plus years old, you know, or for you like 50 plus, but. So then Bonnie's like, you know what I see, Doctor? I see a 50% chance of me getting this right. And she's about to press the button. And Kate's like, yeah, 50% chance for me to get it right as well. And then, see the Doctor's face? His jaw drops as he's looking at Kate. And he's like, I cannot believe this is still happening. Oh my God. And then what happens? Clicks back into the American accent to hide his panic. As he's like, oh, fingers on buzzers, here we go. You know, it's such a good little performance that he's doing here with that accent.
And I just thought of this. There's another tragedy to the Doctor. He's kind of doomed to spend his entire life going place to place, seeing people make the same mistakes over and over again.
Yeah.
In terms of like war and hatred and all that. It's really tragic.
Yeah, well, that's the great thing, the tragedy of an immortal character, isn't it? Because you have the glory of I can never die and I live forever, but the tragedy of I can never die and I live forever. You know,
yeah.
So, he starts arguing with Kate now, and he's like, it's not a game, Kate, because when you fire that first shot, you don't know who's going to die. You don't know whose blood's going to be spilt, whose children are going to scream, and it's going to be how many lives are going to be lost for people to realize they have to do what they had to do from the very beginning and just sit down and talk. Oh my God.
Yeah, and also the whole speech just makes me think of all the in the Day of the Doctor, the whole did you ever count all the children, Doctor? That's the whole situation. Just like, there are innocent people in wars, and we've seen that already in this episode. And it's just,
oh, it's so good. It's so God. Oh my God.
Peter Capaldi is such a great actor.
I know. This is the second time I'm watching this today, and it's still hitting me. This is 6 years later, and it's still punching me in the gut watching it back. Oh my God. Brings a tear to the goddamn eye, doesn't it? When he's back talking to Bonnie, and Bonnie's like, I can't go back at this point. I'm too far deep. It's like, if I don't do it, they're going to kill me. And the Doctor's like, yeah, it's always the same, isn't it? I'm unforgivable. There's nothing I can do that's going to redeem me. Well, here's something you didn't see. I forgive you. I was crying. It's that, I forgive you line. And then he pauses and I forgive you, says it again. Oh, there's no words for it. There's no words for how well it is written and delivered. I miss Doctor Who being like this.
Yes, I also love the fact that the Doctor is still kind of like so traumatized and broken over the war, but even though he knows
everyone
the
lived,
war, it's crazy, but he still went through all the grieving process of blaming himself and all that for like 1,000 years. Again, such a tragic character.
Bonnie's then like, oh, you just don't understand, Doctor. And Capaldi's like, I don't understand. And he goes on this another really long bit where he's like, I have seen a worse war than you can ever imagine. I've done things that you can't possibly think of doing. And when he's got the awesome line where his like voice even cracks a bit when he's saying it. It's like when I close my eyes at night and I hear the screams. And he's like, you take the pain, you grab it until it burns your hand, and you say to yourself, basically he starts saying the War Doctor's motto, where he's like, no more. He's like, no one will ever have to fight in this, see this pain again. No one will have to fight or live like this. But it's just that gives that as impactful as the War Doctor's no more little quote is. It gives it even more meaning behind it.
Also, speaking of the War Doctor, there's a great YouTube video where John Hurt is actually reading some of his script, and it's just as impactful. It's fantastic. I love John Hurt for doing that.
Yeah. So Kate closes her box and she looks at the Doctor and she's like, I'm sorry. And the Doctor's like, I know. Oh, yeah, no, I know you're sorry. Don't worry. And he goes over to Bonnie, and Bonnie's hand's still hesitating over the button. And then she goes, there's nothing in the boxes, is there? Which I think is the best reveal possible, that the boxes are just buttons, and I didn't see it coming when I first watched it.
Yeah, that was Stephen Moffat's idea, and it's just utterly genius, because I don't think the Doctor would make this kind of weapon in the first place. And the idea of the stakes being not that the Zygon will create this kind of war or pandemic, it's that the Zygon will go down this path of wanting war, and the end goal for him is wanting to talk the Zygon out of going into war, which is way more impactful than, push this button and all the Zygons will die or whatever.
Yeah, it gives it a whole lot more meaning. And then Kate's like, hey, but we know the boxes are empty. And the Doctor's like, yeah, but you said that 15 times before. Ha ha ha. And he wipes everybody's memory with it, which I always read to be that he's given this speech 15 times in a row, which I don't get. Because in this one, he just makes sure that Bonnie doesn't forget. Why didn't he do that the first time and then avoid doing it 14 other times? Unless the other times they just pressed the buttons and then realized.
No, my reading of this is that he's been in a similar situation with other Zygons. There's been like 14 Zygons before Bonnie that wanted war.
Yeah, that's yeah. I never read it like that before. That's possible. Yeah.
And also, he makes it so easy for these Zygons to get into this space as well.
Maybe that's one of the reasons why, we were questioning why he would do it. Maybe that's why he let Clara be part of the scanning system, where it's, make it tricky in that it's only the Osgoods, Clara, and the Doctor. But if you get any of those, you can get in, this sort of thing. So it's not impossible.
And I just like the idea of the Doctor giving this kind of same speech to every single Zygon and just talking them out of war.
Yeah.
It's such a nice little thought.
But the Doctor, as we said, didn't wipe Bonnie's mind, but he wiped everybody else's so that every Zygon will forget what Bonnie did. And then he goes on to explain the 50th anniversary and how Clara is the most important person ever, which I now look back at with rose-tinted glasses, because, it's just nice having a companion that matters. Yeah, I didn't think I would miss it. I do miss it. I miss a companion that has an impact on the Doctor's moral choices and their life. I take issue with Clara jumping into timeline and doing all that nonsense, but the idea of Clara being the Doctor's moral compass is really powerful, because the Doctor is an immortal being. He could have like a big godlike complex. We've seen at the end of Waters of Mars where he's like, hey, I'm just going to change history and be Time Lord victorious. And the Doctor being alone is a very dangerous thing. The Doctor needs this kind of moral compass, and he really needs somebody like Clara in the end, I think. Just the idea of giving the villain of the episode forgiveness is like the most powerful thing Doctor Who has ever done. It's just like, even if she's an alien, she's human. There's reason behind her. There's reason behind what she did. Yeah, he was kind of big on forgiveness in this series, because didn't he also forgive Davros? I need to rewatch it, but I just remember they're having a very quiet conversation, because it's right at Davros's end. The big twist is Davros is tricking the Doctor into rejuvenating himself. But before that bit happens, and Davros is like crying, and he like opens up his real eyes, which I hated. It's a mixed bag, but I really like the conversation where it's just the Doctor's willing to sit down with his arch enemy, or one of his arch enemies, Davros, the inventor of the Daleks, and chat with him. And you see it a bit as well when he had to save him as a kid, when he's sitting there and he's like, what's your name, little boy that I'm about to save? Davros. He's like, oh boy, oh heck, do I kill you, do I save you? It's that the Doctor always tries to do the right thing no matter how hard it is, and quite often the right thing is just forgive. That just flashed my head. Earlier in the episode, the Doctor says, I'm 2,000 years old, I'm old enough to be your Messiah. What was Jesus big on? Wine.
Yeah, wine,
No, forgiveness, of course, so, that plays into that theme a bit more. Just some cool things going on.
But also in the theme of forgiveness, you can think about the Master as well. There's a constant relationship where the Doctor sometimes forgives the Master, like at the end of... David. At the end of Series 3.
When he's cradling the Master, just, I forgive you. It's oh my god,
like forgiveness is such a powerful tool in Doctor Who, and it's not utilized enough. It's pretty damn good. Kind of at the end of Family of Blood as well, where the Doctor kind of like, I'm not going to kill you, I'm just going to put
I don't know.
you
I feel like that's the Doctor torturing people. That's a really dark ending,
Yeah, but it's been a while since I've been on a episode, but like, I don't know.
He traps a little girl in a mirror dimension.
Well, but he could have killed them, but instead he was like, I'm not going to kill you.
I'm going to let you live in pain forever. That's more of his cruel Doctor.
Yeah,
but,
fair enough.
Yeah.
We need to get to that episode someday.
It's a great two-parter. I watched it recently. We see Bonnie in the Zygon base, and she starts titillating the fronds off the big control center thing. She turns everything off. There's a really nice touch where we see her human hand go in to press a button, goes in, presses a button, then a Zygon hand pulls a lever. I just thought that was a nice transition.
Yeah, I think this whole two-parter is all about identity as well, and it's like she's letting her identity kind of like, I don't know what she is, a Zygon, that's her identity, and she's like, it's like, yeah, I'm a Zygon, that's fine.
Yeah, yeah.
It really works.
And then we walk up, and Osgood reveals that she's not a fan of Doctor Who. She's like, "What's the TARDIS stand for?" Which it's like a nice like pull the carpet from under you, where the fan, quote unquote, the fan doesn't know what the TARDIS means.
Yeah, but there's a line where she's like, I've heard a couple of different versions, which is in reference to sometimes it's time and relative dimensions in space, or time and relative dimension in space. It kind of fluctuates between the two. And there's also a lot of plot holes regarding the TARDIS. Sometimes the Doctor invents the name TARDIS out of nowhere, but sometimes the Doctor creates it out of initials. Like, what, the name of a Doctor at the very start. One of the Time Lords is like, oh, somebody just stole a TARDIS, which doesn't make sense in context of Time Lord culture.
Yeah, because the name was, unless Susan had just the biggest influence in Gallifrey possible, where she nicknames it the TARDIS, and just every other Time Lord was like, oh yeah, no, Susan's got it right. She's got it pegged. That's a good granddaughter you got there. Yeah.
What is canon in Doctor Who anyway? Exactly.
I do like Capaldi's version of totally and radically driving in space. So, the Doctor... Hey, look, my dog's in the background now. It's interesting that the filter's not getting rid of Honey. There she is. That's the pitter-patter you hear running across the episodes sometimes. It's her running across the hardwood floors because she hears me talking. And she's like, who are you talking to? Oh, no one. Bye. Anyway, so the Doctor is chatting with Osgood, and he's like, do you want to come travel the TARDIS with me? And she's like, oh yeah, more than anything, but I have to stay here because you made me the nuclear deterrent against the Zygon War. Which is, yeah, fair enough. And then he asks Clara to go inside the TARDIS, which she eventually does. And the Doctor's like, okay, Osgood, which version are you, human or Zygon? And she's like, oh, I'm Osgood, it doesn't matter. And she's like, I've got to know. And he's like, I'll tell you one day, and it'll be the day when you don't care about the answer, and that's when another Osgood appears. And here's my theory about which one is a human and which one is a Zygon. So, throughout the entire episode, we've seen Osgood with the question mark collar and with the broken glasses taped together. Yeah? Mm-hmm. And we're still chatting to that Osgood right now. And then another Osgood appears who's wearing a shirt, tie. She's dressed like, which Doctor is this? With the sweater vest. Fifth?
I need to rewind it to see her properly. God damn it, BBC iPlayer sucks for looking at stuff.
Yeah. I've got it 4319 is a pretty good two-shot.
Yeah. I don't really recognize what kind of
I recognize
design,
the jumper, but that's it. I only recognize, and you can only see a smidge of the sweater. But here's my theory. So, if we remember last week, my theory was that the Osgood with the scarf was the original Zygon, because the Zygons can't produce clothing. The clothing's part of their flesh, which means that the Zygon here is the one with the question mark collar and the broken glasses. They just swapped glasses. And that because, that would be the clothing that they would have been wearing when they took over Osgood's body. The new human Osgood is the one in the regular clothes. Zygon Osgood is the one in the clothes we've been seeing all episode, and it's to throw you off that they've swapped glasses. That's my theory.
Do you know what the Osgoods would tell you in response to that?
Shut up, nerd.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, and you know what that would validate to me? That would validate that I'm right. I figured it out. I know which one to kill.
I'm sure anybody listening to this would probably tell us, did we ever follow up from this plot line in the Big Finish stuff? Because there's a unit series where Osgood is a part of it. I don't know if it's explained anymore or if it even references the two
I feel
Osgoods.
like having two Osgoods in an audio drama would confuse me to no end.
Well, I mean, it confuses you right now.
It doesn't. I figured it out. It doesn't confuse me.
What if one of them adapted an accent?
Then you'd be able to know. Then that's what they need to do. Okay, so the Doctor says goodbye to Osgood, goes onto the TARDIS, and Clara's like, hey, you must have thought I was dead. And he was like, yep, absolutely, I thought you were murdered dead. And she's like, oh, how did that make you feel? And he said it was the longest month of his life. To which Clara's like, but it must have been like 5 minutes. And he's like, oh, I'll be the judge of time. Which makes, that kind of implies that there was a lot of mind wiping, and who knows how long they were in that basement trying to figure things out, sort of. Delio, I don't know what he's implying really with them. It was a month,
or he's just
Clara's
he's
perception
just saying,
of time was different when she was inside the mind thing.
I think he's just saying, time kind of slows by when you're mourning the death of a loved one.
Yeah, that could be as well. But then we go to Osgood's, and my theory gets confirmed even more when the Osgood with the broken glasses is like, can we get ice cream? And then human Osgood's like, yeah, but then we have to go back to work. And then Zygon Osgood's like, so what are we doing today? Because that was Bonnie, and she doesn't know what Osgood actually does. She's trying to figure out the job, and she's learning from the human Osgood.
I mean, she doesn't need to learn from the human Osgood. She has her memories and shit like that.
Yeah, but she's dumb. I don't know.
But I guess she kind of doesn't have her memories and all that, because if the memories worked that way, the Zygon Clara would have known how to get into the... Yeah,
what are the rules? What?
And then we get a next time trailer for an awful episode, the found footage one.
Yeah, it's a shame. The next time trailer, it's an episode written by the guys that write Inside Number 9, which is an excellent TV show. Well, it's hit and miss, but it's mostly good. And I really recommend people watch it if they haven't watched it. And they wrote that episode of Doctor Who, and they star in it. And it's the only episode I know of that's done in a found footage style. And it sucks. I was so disappointed by that episode. It sucks so bad. And it also has the curse of being right before the finale. It's a 3-part finale, and it's a spectacular finale for the most part. Face the Raven's okay, but Heaven Sent,
Hellbent is,
it's fine. I need to rewatch it. It got a lot of hate,
same.
but I didn't remember hating it when I watched it.
I remember really disliking a lot of it, but now that this whole Timeless Child stuff has come along, I'll probably look back on it quite favorably.
Yeah, but Heaven Sent is spectacular. But
it is.
That does bring us to the end of the Zygon Inversion and our 2-part Zygon Inversion episodes. So, what do you think about this episode and the story as a whole?
I think I spent a lot of time last week just being like, so what are the rules? But in the end, I don't think the rules really matter. I think this is a really well-told, emotionally engaging political episode of Doctor Who, which is very rare for Doctor Who, and I think it really works. It's a classic Capaldi episode. I think it's going to be looked on favorably for many years to come. What about yourself?
Yeah, no, exactly everything the same. I remember watching it when it came out, and I was probably one of the few people that loved Capaldi in his first series. I really, really enjoyed him as the Doctor, but this was the moment for me where I went, oh my god, you're amazing as the Doctor. That war speech, just even if you don't want to watch the episode, I'm sure the whole thing's been uploaded to YouTube, because it is just, god, it's one of the best modern Who moments ever. It is so good. I love this 2-parter. The first part, kind of leaves a lot to be desired, but it has to do a lot of groundwork so that they can do 15 minutes of a speech for the Doctor. They have to cover a lot of plot in that first episode, and it pays off spectacularly.
I think Peter Capaldi just really nails his performance here, and I really loved him in the first season. I think his characteristics just let him down a bit. I didn't like the whole cue card thing, or am I a good man kind of thing. This is a better version of Am I a Good Man, where he's trying to convince people
who's the hybrid
to be better. Even that in this episode was a bit
Yeah. He like Jodie suffered from some bad plots, but like the Doctors before him, his performance and the writing really helped him lift up.
It's very bold for Doctor Who to be like, okay, we're just going to stand in one room for 15 minutes. The Doctor is just going to speak about war, and there's not going to be much back and forth between any characters. There's not going to be any jokes. You're just going to listen to his kind of lecture about war, and it really works because it comes from a place of experience in his past.
Yeah.
Whereas in the newer seasons, it's criticized a lot for like lecturing the audience, and it's just like it doesn't have the same feel to it. It's not personable. It's just there.
It doesn't feel like
it
doesn't feel like the Doctor's looking down the camera, waggling his finger.
Yeah.
There's something about it that's just yeah. I could watch it again right now. It's such a good speech. My God. But thank you very much for listening to Who Watches Who, a Doctor Who podcast. Next week, it is the news. Not a lot of news has come out so far since last month. It's been quite a quiet month, but we'll see.
To be fair, it's only been 12 days as of recording. It's
True, we are a bit ahead of schedule.
There might be something massive coming out the next couple of days, but after the news, next month we're focusing on the Sea Devils to both celebrate the 50th anniversary of that story and also celebrate the return of the Sea Devils this Easter. So yeah, be sure to get out your old BritBox accounts and give out a watch on BritBox.
Yeah. So we've got the news, then the Sea Devils for all of February and into March. It's going to be a good time. We haven't visited. I realized today we haven't covered a Classic Who episode in about 4 months. Which is crazy, but Flux kind of took over our lives, and then we had the wee break, but the last episode we covered was Sarah Jane's farewell. That was the last Classic Who episode we covered.
Well, technically, do you want to count K9 and Company as Classic Who?
True. It's like a spin-off. It doesn't really count,
K9 and Company and Hand of Fear are probably the worst episodes of Classic Who we've covered.
K9
we
Hand
had
of Fear was bad.
we kind of had fun in an ironic way covering them both.
Yeah.
Just listening to K9 and Company being all about
dirt
plants
and all about dirt. Soil, the pH value of soil. What a great time. It did fly by. I'll give it that. The pacing was mental. It flew by. But no, I'm looking forward to going back into some Classic Who because it's been a while since we've done Classic Who. And actually, if you go onto our YouTube page, or if you're watching this on our YouTube, I've created a bunch of playlists for New Who, Classic Who, spin-offs and stuff like that, and it's really, really nice to look at. The only thing I struggled with is where to put the Doctor Who movie. Right now, it's only in Classic Who, but does it count as a spin-off because it was trying to set up this whole new series, and it's kind of connected to the classic series and kind of not? I didn't know what to do with it, so I just stuck it in Classic Who.
I think that could eventually go in its old folder of the wilderness years, where we'll eventually cover all these weird oddities of Doctor Who during the 90s, because there is a lot of weird stuff, spin-off movies with the Brigadier and these Stranger things where we couldn't use the character of the Doctor, so we invented a new character called the Stranger.
Yeah, or maybe the Doctor Who in the Dalek movies. Maybe they could get stuck in there as well. Maybe what would we call it? I don't know what we would call that. Just Yeah.
Right now it fits in.
It's
Classic
fine,
Who,
but that's a future me problem. What a sucker that guy is.
Yeah. It could also fit in Classic Who and this new wilderness.
Oh yeah, I could put it into more than one playlist for
Yeah.
sure. It was a struggle that I had earlier today. But anyway, yes, thank you very much for listening to this podcast. This has been Who Watches Who, a Doctor Who podcast. It is available in audio form wherever you listen to your podcasts, and also in video form at YouTube, Who Watches Who on YouTube. You can find us on Twitter at WatchesDoctor, on Facebook at Who Watches Who. You can follow me on Twitter at Cloth223, and Scott starts talking right about now.
And you can send us an email at whowatcheswhopod@gmail.com. Just send us anything about your thoughts. What are your thoughts of this episode of Doctor Who? What do you think about speech by Capaldi? Anything you read into the episode? What's your favorite Capaldi moment? Anything like that? Just send us a bloody email.
Yeah, when did Capaldi become the Doctor for you? Were you like me and loved him in season 1, or did it take you until this episode to love him? Or maybe this episode didn't convince you. Maybe you didn't like him. If not, I want to hear from you if you didn't like him. Scott turned his webcam off. Why? Gee, he's back.
I didn't.
He did. I've got video proof now. But yeah, send us an email, as Scott said, and we'll see you next week with the news. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.